Welcome everyone to another edition of the Backmarkers F1 Show podcast. Thank you everybody for joining us for today's episode. This is number 105 of our podcast. We're going to be recapping the 2021 Spanish Grand Prix today. Before we get started, of course, as your usual reminder that our podcast is sponsored by the GP Box, the world's leading motorsport marketplace area where you can buy some awesome F1 merchandise, memorabilia, used car parts, and anything else for the motorhead person in your life. So check the video description down below and you'll find some exclusive discount codes from the GP Box. So for today's episode, alongside me tonight is my two co-hosts, my fellow backmarkers, Tyler McDonald and Shaker Barty. Tyler, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. Yourself, Chris?
Doing well. Still a little bit buzzing after, of course, the first doubleheader of the weekend. So I know we got a lot to talk about as well. Shaker, how about you? What's going on with you?
I feel great. And like you said, buzzing from the double weekend. Just excited for the next race now.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? We're really kind of getting into the business end of the season now. It was pretty slow of a start, actually. But now we're really picking up. And, of course, we're going to Monaco next, which is very, very exciting. Pretty much kind of the Super Bowl of the Formula One calendar. So I'm looking forward to that. But let's dive right into it then. It's a Spanish Grand Prix that we had kind of cautious expectations for because we obviously know the history of the Spanish Grand Prix circuit and that it tends to provide some boring racing. And this probably won't go down as a classic, but at the end of the day, it was a fairly decent race. And definitely the championship battle between Hamilton and Verstappen really spiced things up for us. So, Tyler, let's just start with you. Just general race thoughts to begin with. What did you think overall of the 2021 Spanish Grand Prix? Did it live up to your expectations? What do you think?
No, I think it was a pretty good Grand Prix considering that it was a Spanish Grand Prix. If you put it in for where it lists on normal Grand Prix weekends, I'd say it was an average race. But that's a good race for the Barcelona circuit. So I thought the Mercedes strategy really made the last half of the race interesting to see how Hamilton would catch up and how fast he would catch up, and whether or not the overtake on Verstappen was going to be easy or if it was going to be a little tricky. Of course, we know the answer to that now, but I think that's what helped the race really bring it up a little bit more than what could have been if there wasn't that strategy kind of called by Mercedes.
Yeah, like you said, I think Tyler said about it's for a Spanish Grand Prix. It was quite eventful. Overtakes. You don't expect that at the Spanish Grand Prix that much. We've heard in the last few years the pole sitter's always won. So overall, it was an eventful Spanish Grand Prix. Probably the best we've seen in the last few years in terms of providing an actual race rather than just watching the pole sitter just stay in first place the entire time. So, yeah, I think like you said, the strategy calls were really interesting. Some people did it better than others. But yeah, I think it was a great race overall for Spain.
And strategy will be an interesting talking point that I'm curious to know what you guys have to think. But let's start with really at the beginning of the race in lap one. And like you mentioned, pole position was so important. But Max Verstappen kind of broke those odds right away in turn one after he got by Lewis Hamilton. And we're just going to quickly look at the overtake here because, I think as much as we've seen the battles between Hamilton and Verstappen, there's always going to be some sort of, I don't know if controversy is the right word, but both sides of the Verstappen and Hamilton teams obviously always have their thoughts on the incidents between the two. But this was a crucial start for Max Verstappen, which eventually it didn't really do much for him at the end of the day. But it was an excellent overtake going into turn one. And I just thought that as great of a move as it was for Max Verstappen as well, it was brilliant driving from Lewis Hamilton too to back out a little bit and not make it a bigger incident than it was.
I think that's a key point you talk about, Chris, is that right here when you see Max cut in, Lewis just steps off the gas a little bit, turns away to his right, to his left to kind of stay away from Max to avoid front wing contact and really hamper the long-term impacts of his race. And he knows, we've seen it so many times before, the wise old head on Lewis Hamilton to avoid incidents and know that at the end he's fighting for a championship, not the win of that race on the first corner. So you could really see this maturity out of Hamilton. It was a beautiful move by Max, I thought, as well. A fair racing move. He got his elbows out, and I don't have any issues, in my opinion. I thought it was good hard racing between two very talented drivers.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And one thing I like too about Max there is that he didn't really break that much later. It was just that he broke a little bit earlier. Maybe he was just kind of feathering the brake pedal a little bit. But I think that that move was 100% fine. I know some people were saying that if Hamilton hadn't have pulled out, it would have been a crash and Verstappen would have been at fault. That's one of those 50-50 race opening lap incidents right there. So I don't think that there was any fault with that. And at this point, we've come to expect this from Verstappen, right? If he sniffs just a little bit of an opening, he's going to send it down the inside. And it's, again, as you mentioned, Shaker, pole position being so important around this track, he had to do it. And it didn't work out in the end, but at the very least, it started off his race in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. And I think with Max kind of doing it, the first few weeks, starting from second and giving Lewis Hamilton that push right in the first lap from the very beginning, I think kind of provided Lewis with the pressure the last few weeks, and he kind of knew he knew it was coming. He saw Max at the corner of his eye. He's like, all right, it's a full send down that first turn for Max, and I just got to watch it. And I think even in that clip, you see him almost go for the full turn around that first corner, and there's the last second, it kind of looks like he pulls out. But so I think it was brilliant from both. I think it was great defending. I mean, great view from Lewis Hamilton. First of all, see it coming, and then same with Max. He pounced right away, right off the start. I wonder if he started in second again. So that'd be kind of interesting to see if because that's been their toughest things the last few years is the start, and maybe that second gear is what's kind of doing it for him to get right off the start and not provide too much pressure into those tires.
I think it was the other thing too is that there was more grip on the inside than there was on the left-hand side where Hamilton was starting. I think that's some of the comments Lewis made actually on the formation lap heading out to the race. But anyways, it was definitely a very good start, and of course it didn't work out in the end, which is what's going to segue into our next point, which was the eventual strategic game that played out throughout the whole race, which eventually kind of decided this race. There was obviously a few more things that decided, but the main thing was obviously strategy. So Tyler, I'm curious to know your thoughts about the Red Bull strategy. And first of all, do you think that that's really what lost them the race here in Spain, much like it did in some of the previous other races? And if you were in that situation, what might have you have done differently?
I was thinking about that during the actual race, like when the whole strategies out was coming up, unraveled, and Lewis pitted, and I was like, okay, is Max going to pit here? And it was like, well, I don't know if he's going to be safe to Hamilton. If he's not safe to Hamilton, and he's going to come up behind Hamilton, I don't think he can pass him again. And that was the main thing going through my head on that lap. And then when Verstappen decided and Red Bull decided to keep Verstappen out, it was like, okay, now they have to stay out. They don't have a chance to rebound and to answer back, because I think that Hamilton already covered that gap within the first lap on those new tires. So it's very, very tricky. And like Christian Horner said, or was it Christian or was it Max's engineer? I forget which one. But said that it was Hungary 2019 all over again. We're going to have the same battle. So, and we saw that's exactly what happened. Lewis came up and, with 5 or 6 laps left, passed Max fairly easily. So it's a catch-22 for Red Bull. I mean, if you pit and Max comes out behind Lewis, then you're going to lose the race. Then pretty much automatically, because Max isn't going to pass Lewis, or it's going to be very hard to do so. Where if you stay out, it's like, oh, maybe he gets held up in traffic. He almost got held up by his teammates. It was just a different strategy. It's something to look at for Max being 25-6 seconds ahead of Lewis at that point.
I think it was a terrible call. I genuinely think the fact that within 5 seconds Christian Horner comes on and saying it's Hungary 2019 again, make your call. You ended up taking Max out in the last 3 laps anyways to get him fastest lap. You were already losing. Why not, if it's Hungary 2019 again and you didn't make the call in Hungary, why not try something that could be different? In the end, what's going to happen? Max is still going to get second place. I think if it's a good strategy call for Mercedes, you should be trying to counter that strategy with your best strategy call, not leaving Max out to do the rest of the work. That's my opinion on the matter.
The thing is that with Hungary, it's a little bit easier to overtake in Hungary. Or in Spain, again, you're also thinking, okay, it's not a big overtaking circuit. And he did have a 26-second lead with 22 laps left. So, I mean, yeah, he's going to be faster, but if you're Red Bull, you're thinking as well, like maybe he won't catch us. And if he's not safe like I said, if you're not safe and you're going to pit Max in, he's going to come out behind Lewis no matter what. Maybe there's just, that's why they stayed out, because, they know they're going to be second if they pit right now. So let's just try staying in track position and staying as, out in first as long as we can and try and sneak out a win.
Yeah, but why would you not want to provide that extra pressure to Lewis Hamilton? You basically gave Lewis Hamilton about 25 laps to free roam and catch up to you, where you could have had the opportunity to provide the pressure to Lewis Hamilton not to do that. It would have been. I
don't think if they would have pit right the lap after that Lewis went by, that Lewis pit, I think that Lewis would have passed him. I don't think they were safe in terms of the actual pit. I don't think Max.
No, I'm not saying that Max would have come out ahead. Lewis would have definitely come out ahead even if they pitted afterwards. But rather than giving Lewis Hamilton 25 laps to get to first place, you would have given Lewis Hamilton 25 laps to stay in first place, provided with Max Verstappen giving you pressure behind.
It wouldn't have been. Max would have passed him. I don't think he would have passed him if.
No, but I think it would have provided more pressure to Lewis Hamilton, and I think he would have made more mistakes, and I think that would have been more of an ample opportunity to Max to get that to get the step ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it that way too.
Yeah, that's like I said. That's my personal opinion on the matter. It's if you already know your strategy call didn't work 2 years ago, and you have the data to say that your medium tires are not going to outlast the full 25 remaining laps and you're going to have to pit anyways, why not pit early and try to make the times up?
Yeah, well, I can see that. I can see what you mean.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think that their hand was forced into staying out because they didn't believe that Max could pass Lewis on track.
Yeah, and here's another thing. I know Sergio wasn't able to provide, hold up Lewis Hamilton as best as he could. But imagine having Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen behind you when you're trying to overtake. You're trying to pass that Red Bull in front as well as try to keep the pressure behind from the other Red Bull. I think it would have changed the race a little bit. The outcome might have been the same. I think the outcome more than likely would have been the same as what we saw in the end. But I think it would have given Lewis Hamilton a little bit more pressure to work with. It would have provided Mercedes a different strategy call. Maybe they would have done something different with Valtteri in the end. These are big ifs, but I think they did exactly what they did in Hungary, and it never worked in Hungary. So why continue doing it?
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, if Perez was up there, it could have really changed the race. And I mean, it could be the same too with Bottas. I mean, he kind of got hampered on lap one and stuck behind Charles, and his race was over at that point. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it could have been even a more unfair advantage for Max if Bottas was up there too, or would Bottas have hampered Lewis maybe and fought Lewis more, and that could have let Max win. Yeah. It's very interesting what could have happened, but I mean, who knows?
We could talk about what could have happened in any race. What if it rained in Spain? How interesting would that race have been? But I think with given the information that they were giving, they had, I think they should have brought Max in. And I think like I said, the results might have been exactly the same, but I think it would have provided more data to them to see what they can work with, rather than we already have the data. Let's work with what we got.
Chris, what are your thoughts? How did you like the strategy call?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys bring up both fair points. And if people didn't see my sort of analysis video that I put out, I guess today after the race, and I spent through some time going back into the race and looking over the data. And so maybe, Tyler, I'll address your points first, because, again, you bring up good points and solid ones as well that it's hard to argue against, because that's a big question, right? Is that even if they would have stopped, would he have been able to overtake him? That's a big question, right? And the answer probably is no, just because of the pace of the Red Bull, and we're not exactly sure. But I will say that so Hamilton came in lap 42, if Verstappen would have came in lap, let's say 43 or 44, which, an extra lap or two later, he probably would have been told to push, maybe would have been able to pull out a 23.5 second gap. And the run down into turn one would have been super close between Hamilton and then Verstappen coming out of the pits. Most likely he would have lost track position, right? And then, of course, you had Bottas, who would have stayed out as well. So that's another obstacle. But Valtteri was on a used set of mediums that he put on lap 23, so he was struggling for pace. And then, like you guys mentioned, we saw how easily, for the most part, Hamilton was able to dispatch of Bottas. I think Verstappen would have done the same. So there's that. To Shaker's point, I would agree with him that if you knew that Hungary 2019 was happening, why not do something different? I just don't understand why they did exactly the same thing. You already know what the outcome was going to be from that race, so why not try something else? I think the onus was on Red Bull to risk it, to go outside of the box and to try something. Most likely would have finished second anyway had he not been able to overtake. And I just think that putting them on the fresher tires, his stint to finish the race would have roughly equaled his stint that opened the race on that soft tire, albeit the tires that he would put on later in the race would be a brand new set versus the ones he started on was a used set, obviously, from qualifying. So I think that Verstappen being the hunter instead of the hunted would have at least put pressure on Hamilton instead of, Lewis, who obviously can just pump out the lap times very, very consistently. And like you mentioned, Tyler, off the top, easy overtake and then just coasted to a victory. So at the end of the day, I think Red Bull should have tried to pull the trigger and at least get on that soft tire. They really didn't have too much to lose. But the problem here is also, and what I pointed out in the video, was it started before the race, actually, because the tire allocation heading into the Grand Prix really screwed Red Bull over, and Verstappen in particular, because they only had one new set of the medium tires, whereas Lewis Hamilton had one new set and then one used set as well, which he obviously went on for his second stint. And I don't know why, but Red Bull burned that set of mediums in FP3. And if you guys remember to qualifying, the Mercedes went out in Q1 on the medium tire. And everybody at the time was like, what are they doing? Why are they doing that? Usually you see that for Q2, obviously. We have the answer of why they did it. So Mercedes just completely outclassed Red Bull in the strategy department. And they were thinking 10 days ahead, 10 steps ahead. And whatever happened, whether he was leading after turn one or not, they had everything covered. So at the end of the day, Red Bull really screwed this up, I think.
I think in the end, the Grand Prix really went to the team that was most prepared for the entire weekend rather than the actual race itself.
Right.
It was just preparation. It was they knew exactly what was going to happen. They brought Lewis in at the right time every time. I think they could have maybe gotten a little bit more out of Valtteri by calling him a little bit earlier, but I don't know. Maybe that was his call to stay out. But yeah, I think the team with the best strategy won the entire weekend, not just the race.
No, I gotta agree with that too. And what's the strategist for Mercedes? What's his name again?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
James?
No, James is Valtteri's.
No,
it is James. You're
James
right. Yeah.
is the strategy. Mercedes
you're right.
strategy
for Mercedes. Oh, yeah.
Mercedes, yeah. Sorry,
James
you're right.
Vowles.
It is James. I wasn't sure if it was.
All I heard in the top of my head is Valtteri. It's James.
That's what I was thinking too.
All I heard in the back of my head.
I was like, is James his engineer or the strategist? And I had to try to remember. So thank you for helping me remember. But I think James should have that trophy should go to him. Because I think he was phenomenal this weekend. I think Toto said it. I think Lewis said it that he was the MVP for this weekend, and it really shows it too. Yeah, how important a strategist is, and I think he's probably the most popular or well-known strategist out there, and for good reason. And I wasn't sure if he was up on the podium celebrations, but I mean he should have been. He should have been the guy up there because that trophy should be his. He was phenomenal all weekend, like you mentioned, Chris, thinking 10 days in advance. With their strategy calls. It was just really remarkable and outclassed the whole field.
I mean, Mercedes have been at class since all of last week, since they let Romain get in the car.
That's true.
Yeah.
I have so much respect for them for letting Romain do that. So
yeah, I had that written down, so I guess we can wrap up the show with that actually because it's not.
I figured that was the end of our Mercedes little thing,
It is. I just wanted to add another point to that I found a little bit disappointing on Red Bull's behalf, and I think Christian Horner said this. I know Max kind of said it as well, but I think that he said it because it was the public relations friendly thing to say, which was that there really wasn't much else that they could have done, right? And I think that to a driver like Verstappen, he doesn't want to hear something like that because I think that there's always something that you can do. And Mercedes has been so good at winning races where they don't have the best car. I mean, imagine Mercedes in Bahrain earlier a couple months ago would have said, sorry, Lewis, I mean, the pace just isn't there. There's not much that we can do. but they did. They had an innovative strategy in Bahrain as well, and they won the race. So I think that Verstappen doesn't want to hear those kind of excuses that we weren't quick enough. I don't think that's good enough at this point. And obviously, yes, I think Mercedes have the faster car and race trim, but you have to be innovative and you have to be able to outwit your rivals and win on a day where you're not the best.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree with that too, Chris. And I just want to mention too, with the whole Mercedes strategy and Valtteri and how team orders were there again for Valtteri, but I don't know if he seemed to. I don't think he gave that position up easily. I think Lewis actually had to do an overtake there, which was nice to see. I'm glad that Valtteri kind of has a little bit of fight toward him now instead of just letting Lewis by. Now fight would be nice, competing for wins and not trying to salvage third or whatever. But I'd like to see if there's any positive take for Valtteri, it's that you had a little bit of a chip on your shoulder and you just didn't let Lewis push you around. You made him do an overtake, and it was a nice overtake by Lewis, not the overtake of the weekend that goes to Charles. But it's still a little positive you could take if you're Valtteri.
Yeah, I said it last year. I want to see Valtteri with his elbows out, and that's exactly what I'm seeing this year, and I love it.
Too bad he just doesn't have anything to show for it.
Hey, man, it's hard when you're second.
Yeah.
But did you also guys find it a little bit odd that Bottas probably put up his best fight to Hamilton when he was in a position that wasn't for a race win?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just more. Maybe it's the turning point. Maybe it's like well, you know what? Screw this. I'm tired of being told what to do. Like, I'm fighting for myself here, and I think he knows that because his Mercedes career might be on the line after this year.
Maybe.
And he has to go out with a bang. I don't think they can keep George Russell at Williams for much longer. I think George is going to ask out if he does.
Yeah, I think you're right. And maybe that's part of some people were suggesting that it could be an indication that he's on his way out, which it's interesting. It's certainly a topic that maybe we can debate on another day. But I found that funny that obviously we're not a big fan of team orders, but in that situation, team orders made the most sense, right? As we saw with Perez and Verstappen earlier in that race, right? So before we move up and wrap up the Red Bull Mercedes talk, show of hands, who fought Hamilton harder, Valtteri Bottas or Nikita Mazepin?
I'm going to go Nikita.
I think Nikita too. Phenomenal. I mean, the guy just doesn't get it. Who was it last week that was yelling about him? Sergio?
That's a long list.
It was a long list.
Sergio, there was...
was Max yelling?
Max was yelling, and there was also...
I think Latifi?
Latifi was yelling. Yeah, that's right.
Yelling. It was George Russell the week beforehand, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's a guy, he didn't get it after last week. He had 5 blue flags for whoever's in the lead. I can't remember right now. And didn't get out of the way. And
Perez.
I didn't, it was Perez. Okay. And I didn't see who or how many blue flags he had this weekend for Lewis, but he didn't get out of the way easily. We saw Toto Wolff, which was really cool to see on the broadcast, Toto Wolff and the FIA's discussion, or Toto Wolff complaining to the FIA and Michael Massey to be like, hey, this guy just doesn't move out of the way, like do something about it pretty much. But yeah, no, it was nice to see that on the broadcast. It's just, he doesn't get it. Monaco's going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
Do they not give out like racing points or get points taken away from the thing for getting too many warnings? Like that's
only penalties. Really? That's like if you get Vettel got one for what was it? His collision, I think, because it was so you can get penalty points for that. But I don't know if you can get penalty points for ignoring blue flags. I'm not sure if that's in the rule book.
In 4 race weekends in a row, you gotta.
Yeah.
Well, because you guys
learn from their mistakes, and when they don't, you punish them for it.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned that team radio, and I have it queued up here. I think most people heard it because it was a new addition actually to the broadcast that this is, I think, the first instance of hearing team radio that goes to the FIA. Yeah. Yeah.
I think Crofty was even surprised by it. He was like, oh, that's nice that we have that.
Yeah. I want to see so much more of that, because that's a lot of the stuff that we miss out between the FIA and all this is stuff that's so crucial to find out what actually happened behind the scenes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this was Toto Wolff on the blower to race director Michael Massey.
Mikey, blue flags, Michael, this guy makes us lose the position.
This guy.
You know, when Toto says this guy, you're not on his good books. That's like his like full on like this idiot is what he's trying to say there. It's too bad I didn't see any replays on the broadcast of the actual incident.
I think he was really tired of showing Nikita Mazepin.
Maybe they didn't want to give him the sponsorship time.
The other thing that annoyed me about him is that people are voting for him for driver of the day. He was in top 5 for
Trolls.
driver of the day.
Yeah, it's
like,
just memes.
What?
That's
Bro,
memes.
like, no. That's not
just
meme.
memes.
That's just torturing. Those votes should be going to people who deserve it. Like, not for memes.
Yeah, that's the problem with what you leave it open to everybody, right? So
yeah, it's memes. That's all it's going to be. At that point, people are doing it because
you know what?
And you know what? I bet you one race this year, like a race he doesn't finish last, he's going to get driver of the day. I bet you.
Probably.
You know what was a great F1 meme? Yeah. That one was good. This one is not.
Yeah, fair enough. But I think I just read something actually before we came on the air with Mazepin said that it's going to take him a couple races to learn and get used to the blue flags. I feel like blue flags are pretty cut and dry, you know. Like when I went karting for the first time a couple months ago and I was getting blue flagged all the time because I was so slow, it was pretty simple to understand. Get the fuck out of the way of the leaders. So I don't know what he needs to learn.
I mean, Mick Schumacher seems pretty good at it, and he's done the same amount of races. So I don't know. Monaco is going to be a disaster. It's going to be its own race in itself.
I'm telling you, he's not making the race in Monaco. This was my call at the beginning of the year.
I do want to give a shout out to friend of the show, Mitch Brule, because he did place a wager before the race on the first retirement, and Nikita Mazepin was the odds-on favorite. So he did place a $2 bet on Nikita Mazepin retiring the race. Retiring first from the race. Too bad he didn't cash out on that, but I thought it was a pretty good bet. Might be a good bet for Monaco.
Yeah, I think so.
No, the good bet is he's not making the race.
The thing is, though, is the car is so slow that I don't think that. I don't know.
You can't see for FP1. I have notifications on for Chris Medlin, again, another friend of the show. I have notifications on, and I was at work, and a notification came on for FP1, and it went along the lines of FP1 is green, and 2 minutes in, Nikita Mazepin has spun.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. Nice.
Technically, though, it wasn't a full spin. It was an oversteer moment that led him into the gravel. So
it's a spin.
It's progress.
It's a spin.
I mean, Mazda oversteer doesn't work as well as Mazda spin. So.
True. That's true. That's true.
Fair enough. I think with that we can move on then. Before we move off of the championship talk, because there were two more points I wanted to bring up in relation to the championship, which was kind of obviously the dominating talking point of this weekend. Did you guys see Hamilton's post-race comments about spending so many laps behind Verstappen? He learned more about Verstappen, his driving style, and his car than he did in any of the other races that he's ever been in against Max Verstappen. Did you guys catch those comments?
I did not.
Yeah?
No, I didn't.
Really interesting. That is.
It's kind of one of those ominous Lewis Hamilton quotes, like, you know, when he gets on the radio and says Bono tires are done. Oh, you're like, here we go.
He also said that 5 or 6 laps into the medium tires or something like that. So
that's what I'm saying, though, right? It's like a big cause for concern because you know something big is coming. So is it possibly that he learned something very valuable that he's taking to his engineers in terms of how Verstappen drives? Maybe it's something to do with tire wear, what kind of racing lines he's taking. So can we look at it in a very, if you're a Max fan, let's say, look at it in a pessimistic way to say he's got Verstappen figured out? Or is it just something as a driver or a fellow competitor just picking up on something saying, that's interesting the way he does it?
Well, I mean, Max could say the same about Lewis Hamilton. He's been driving behind him for 4 years now. So, I mean, you could say... But it is kind of interesting because, like, I guess being behind, you definitely get to see more of the racing lines they're taking more, right? And Red Bull is meant to be more there. Again, I'm not an engineer, so I'm making this up as I go. Theoretically, Red Bull cars are made to stay more planted on the ground around corners because that's, they're supposed to have a really good that word.
Chassis.
Pardon?
Chassis?
Yes. They're supposed to have a really good chassis. So I'm just wondering if it, around those corners, is he just seeing wider, faster turns or more? I don't know. Like it's interesting comments because you definitely you learn from watching other people as well. So it could be interesting. Maybe he learned about how he overtakes a little bit more, and that's why he sees them coming a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, that championship's over. That's a scary comment. That is very scary that he's already noting that. So, I mean, I think it's more of a pessimistic thing saying, I don't know, Lewis might have Max not figure it all the way, but he's got a good idea of how he's going to race when he's ahead of Lewis. And that could really work in Lewis's favor for races to come when he's behind Max and, trying to overtake him, just knowing where he's strong and where he isn't.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Like maybe it's like, because I just remembered, obviously there was a big fight over the past weekend with Canelo Alvarez, and is it sort of like a boxer where in that first round you got a feeling out process? Top boxers usually lose that first round, and it's just kind of a visual to see you're finally in the ring with that opponent, and then you just notice something where you're like, okay, got you. I see you there. Every time you drop that left hand, you leave yourself open for an uppercut, something like that. Maybe it's along those lines, or it just could be that it's just something that he just picked up on that he found interesting that, yeah, maybe Verstappen just uses more of the tires than Hamilton does. We obviously know Hamilton is a king at tire preservation, and I think that Max has to drive that Red Bull a little bit more on the limit than the W12. So it's very interesting, but yeah, I think that maybe the gauntlet has been thrown down there by Hamilton, like you said there, Tyler. So very, very interesting with the championship battle shaping up, which we'll just wrap up on a little bit later in the show. But I wanted to move on then to the hat that I'm wearing. Of course, Daniel Ricciardo from McLaren had his best weekend for McLaren. I know he equaled his best finish in 6th, but I think that in terms of the overall weekend, he finally outraced his teammate Lando Norris. Qualifying was much better, and then obviously he seemed more comfortable in the race as well. So disappointing weekend from Norris. I think there's another driver that kind of got screwed up by Mazepin in Q1, if you guys remember back to the car park in the final couple of chicanes. But overall, finally, a nice positive step for Ricciardo after what was a tough Portuguese Grand Prix.
Yeah, that's awesome to see from Ricciardo. I thought, like you mentioned, Chris, it was his best overall weekend with the McLaren. And we were talking about, I think was it last week or the race before? I forget which one, just off the top of my head. But we were talking about how Ricciardo's doing an interview with Sky Sports and just say, he's been talking to Carlos Sainz as well, and just how they're adjusting going into new cars for the season. How they're not there yet. It's going to take a few races to really get in terms of what the braking points and the fuels for the different cars. And he was full on very honest with that with Sky Sports. And I think that it was one of the weekends where you say, okay, he's really learning this McLaren car and really figuring it out. So a huge positive for Ricciardo, and he's very handy around Monaco. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do next race on the street circuit.
Yeah, I agree. It was a fantastic weekend from Daniel Ricciardo. I was really happy to see him back in the top 6. Doesn't it almost seem like a more, I don't know, it sounds wrong saying it, more mature Daniel Ricciardo? I know he's already like in his mid-30s, but like, it's just like head down. I'm racing this weekend. He's come so focused on getting everything in that car right. He's following every team instruction down to the T. Like he's head down. I want to compete this season. I know McLaren has a good car. It's not about building up that car anymore like it was with Red Bull and then Renault. It's like McLaren knows where they are and they know what they got to fight for. And I think he's really gone all in for that. So
yeah, I think he's recognized the seriousness of the challenge as well. In moving to a team like McLaren. And also, like you mentioned, he's in his 30s, so he kind of realizes that this is probably one of his potential last chances for a big push to a championship. So he's got something very positive and special at McLaren with the whole package that they've got going on. And, of course, the big rule shift coming, which could favor a team like them that's sort of right on the brink of the top 2 teams, but not just there yet. So I think overall it was a nice step forward for him, and hopefully, like you said, being in Monaco at his next race, we'll see how that suits the McLaren, but obviously, a race that he does really well at too. So next thing I wanted to talk about was Ferrari. Tyler, you mentioned overtake of the race for Charles Leclerc on the outside of turn 2, obviously on lap 1. I would maybe throw in there Sergio Perez's overtake or Lance Stroll on Fernando Alonso, which was pretty good as well. But Ferrari and Leclerc, really good run of form heading into Monaco, which is a track that should suit them actually decently well, but an excellent race for them.
Yeah, awesome stuff. And Charles was very mature the whole race, stuck with it, and had P4 pretty much locked down the whole race. I know he's in P3 for a while, but you knew eventually Bottas was going to get by him. So it was awesome from Charles. I thought he was really, really impressive. And like you said, for me, it's the overtake of the weekend because of how significant it was for the race, for Charles' strategy, and for the whole, in general, outcome of the race as well. Just of, how much it impacted the strategy from his side and from Bottas' side as well. And Sky Sports was talking about how Fernando Alonso used that outside line, back in 2011, I think the race was, to get around. I forget who it was, but just because of there was cleaner air on the outside, and Charles, I don't know, maybe he was watching, maybe got that info in his head, and he did the exact same thing, went along the outside, and Bottas said that he just didn't see him, which, I mean, that's not really an excuse from Valtteri. It's not a valid excuse, I think, at least. So. No,
saying that to cover for Lewis Hamilton too,
maybe
see him.
Yeah, didn't see him. So unfortunately for Valtteri, it hampered his race, but no, awesome for Charles, and like you said, Carlos Sainz also had a very good race as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they do in Monaco. Maybe they can wrap up P5 and 6 for themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Charles Leclerc really put his head down and just, I'm going to race. I know where my position is. Great overall weekend from Charles. It's really different from how he was driving last year. From what I've seen in these first 4 races, I think last year they were really trying to push that car to its limits. Get the most out of it as they can. And I think this year it's just been, we have this car and we're gonna get it to the finish line to do the best we can, basically. And I think that's really worked for Charles. Maybe it's a huge car difference. So it's, instead of trying to push that car to its limits, it's really more trying to keep it under control and everything. Keep it under control and still make those passes when he can. So really good. I'm really happy to see Carlos Sainz settling into that Ferrari as well. He's one of the drivers I'm looking forward to see the results of being in that team. I think we'll see the best results at the end of the season. But I'm really happy to see him making slow moving steps forward with that.
Yeah, he's doing really well, and Monaco should suit them well. Leclerc said that slow speed corners have been an advantage for them, so who knows, maybe he'll be on the podium. Optimistic. Maybe it'll just be a massive crash up front. Monaco can provide all sort of weird things. It could either be a boring race or it could be just insanity. So we'll see. Let's hope for insanity. A little bit of rain.
I'll check it now.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
All right, and then a couple other points I had here was talking going further in the midfield was Esteban Ocon, 4-0 against Fernando Alonso this year.
Yeah, he's really giving it. Good for Esteban, and he's won Shaker over. That's huge. I think that's really that's a win in the season itself. Is that Shaker is now a fan of Esteban.
I thoroughly enjoyed his race.
See?
He had a really good race.
Maybe he'll come on our podcast now.
I love the comment from Crofty of him with the blue flag letting Max pass. He's gotten a few fisticuffs with him a few years back. He's learned. Love that comment from him. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed his race. Really good to see. Always happy to see Fernando Alonso back on track. And to go back to what you said, Tyler, they were showing that 20 video of him, and then it was Lance Stroll and it was Fernando Alonso that took him over. When he was in the Williams, and he said he was something about it's like, oh, you can't race with these cars at all. And then it was Lance Stroll overtaking him this year on the same track at the exact same spot, and then it was them like shaking hands and laughing at the end of the race. That's
nice.
What it was.
I didn't see them shaking hands after the race, but that's good. They had a really good scrap, and it was really clean. It was really clean as well, which was nice. Like I don't expect anything else, but it was good hard racing, which was awesome to see. So no, I mean, very good from Esteban, and I mean Fernando, he's doing well. But again, maybe it's just going to take him a few races just to get back into the Formula One groove of things and these new cars. And no, we'll see. I have optimism about Fernando. He's a two-time world champion, and he can get it done.
Yeah, it's not like he had a bad race. It was just that Ocon just had a much better one.
Yep. Would have to agree.
And I mean, Alpine, it's maybe necessarily didn't have the weekend that they were hoping for, but they're kind of still ahead of Aston Martin at this point, and AlphaTauri as well, which, just speaking of which, AlphaTauri, I didn't have it in my notes, but it just popped into my head because I watched Team Radio before we got on for the show, was I think Yuki Tsunoda has to calm down a little bit.
He apologized for his remarks the day of the Grand Prix, I think, is when he apologized. Oh, you didn't hear this?
No.
Oh, Chris, do you have the quote, or?
I don't have the exact quote, but in that Team Radio, the best of Team Radio that F1 released, he was just very like snappy with his. I mean, you know how he is on the Team Radio. He loves to swear. He's very animated, and even his race engineer was just telling him, "It's like calm down."
He suggested that to media in the pen after qualifying, that he has a different car from Gasly, and that Gasly's car is better than his. And it's like, that's something you don't say to reporters. And like, I think everyone was tweeting about it, being like, I know he's a rookie, but maybe the PR team should kind of get a little, handle on him, just to say that, you don't say that to reporters. You keep that in house if you think that's the issue. And he apologized after the next day for his comments. I think someone sat him down and told him, and obviously language or English isn't his first language, obviously. So
he speaks very well, though.
He does speak very well, English very well, but it's something that he's learning, and that's controversial. But he didn't have a good race either. Unfortunately, Gasly had a good race actually, coming back from his 5-second penalty he had, I think, and the issues he had. But would he finish P10?
P10.
I literally just had it up and I closed it.
Yeah. Very good race from Pierre. I thought he was impressive as well.
Yeah. Aren't they right behind McLaren in terms of their constructor standings?
No. AlphaTauri?
Yeah. No, I'm thinking of...
AlphaTauri at the moment is in 6th. They are 5 points ahead of Aston Martin and 5 points behind Alpine for 5th. So it's kind of like a 2-tier system now. You got Ferrari in 4th with 60 points, McLaren in 3rd with 65, and then you got the 5, 6, and 7 between Alpine, AlphaTauri, and Aston Martin, really only separated by 10 points.
I'm really happy to see Williams not in last place on the list. I know they are still, but just not having them at 10th feels kind of good.
Yeah, I mean, George had a decent weekend. I mean, good qualifying. Latifi struggled a little bit. I'm not sure what it was, but he just, for some reason, just didn't have the grips this weekend, which is unfortunate to see from Nicholas. But George struggled in the race then at the end on his tires. It looks like he was on for a decent finish, but the Williams strategy just didn't play in a favor. I thought they were on I thought they had a really good strategy at first. I was like, oh crap, at one point they were 7th and 8th or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh crap, this is a good strategy from Williams. And they pitted again. I thought, okay, maybe that's again another good strategy if everyone's going on a 2-stop, but no, it just didn't work out for them, unfortunately. A good call though. I mean, they were being aggressive with it.
It's the most that they could do, really, right? It's not it got a little bit windier too, so that doesn't necessarily suit their car. Yeah,
hates wind. It's got to be in clean air with no wind. So maybe they can try like the Sahara Desert. I don't know. Maybe their car would be phenomenal there.
I mean, maybe Monaco, right? If you're Russell, Mr. Saturday, you get up there, right? Who knows?
Could be. Yeah, could be.
All right. Well, then, just to finish out, then I think we've pretty much gone through the entire field, which is great. Let's talk about Mick Schumacher again, who had another very solid race. Struggled a little bit more toward the end, but he had an exceptional start. If you guys have a chance, maybe if you have F1 TV, check it out on that, or if you can find it on YouTube, I'm sure it's there. But he had a phenomenal start. I think he was running as high as 16th or 15th after the first opening couple of laps. And then afterwards, his race kind of got a little bit complicated. I only saw this actually post-race on social media, so we'll show this to you guys here as well if you maybe happen to have missed it. He had some pit stop mishaps when he was coming in. I believe this was for his first stop, so he just kind of, I think pretty much every driver's done this in their F1 career, just kind of overshot his box a little bit, and I think he missed it kind of when you see this reverse angle, almost hit his guys over on that right-hand side too, because he didn't come in cleanly, which is, it's not that easy actually to come in straight because it's on an angle. Or I guess I'll play the team radio here.
Is everybody okay? Sorry about that.
It's all okay. Reset, big adjuster. Everyone's okay. Reset, big adjuster.
So thankfully, everybody was okay, and we saw afterwards. I wonder who Mick learned this from, going around to his team and building the chemistry and, you know, building good relationships with this team. It reminds me of somebody, but I just can't think of who.
Nikita?
Maybe with a couple of dollar bills, maybe. I'm not sure. But so, yeah, Mick went around afterwards in the garage and kind of, you know, obviously gave everybody a fist bump and a handshake and apologized to some of the pit crew member. And I think toward the end of this video, you'll see him. I believe Rob was the name of the mechanic that was holding the front jack. And you'll see him come up to him shortly, and they have a very nice, wholesome embrace. And of course, no hard feelings or anything like that. They understand that it was just a rookie mistake. And then, yeah, this is when the front jack man right there. Happy to see him. So it's just great to see that Mick is making a real effort to build a nice team around him, even though Haas is struggling.
It was a really nice catch by Rob, the front jack man, because he's coming in hot and he stayed on his feet, quick feet. He got ready to go, caught that car up, jacked up. It was really nice by him, actually. And I really loved how, it seemed like they were communicating as the pit stop was going on. And, the jack man has one hand. He's like, yeah, no, I'm good. And, lets the jack go with one hand. And everything. It was really cool to see. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, what a gesture, you obviously haven't had the greatest start to the season, but, I just love his entire persona. Just like the super nice guy on the grid, everybody likes him. Nobody hates Mick. Yeah. And, he makes, he's accidents happen, obviously, and I'm sure the mechanics know of it, but just to go out of your way and be like, hey, man, I'm really sorry about that, it's just that gesture adds quite a lot to those mechanics, and they want to perform for Mick. It's not like, hey man, I'm sorry I almost hit you over, but you better watch out. You got to watch out.
It's a good point that you bring up, though, right? He's giving them motivation in what's a really difficult season for them, and where they know themselves they're not going to be getting many results this year. So I think it makes everybody, at least on his side of the garage, excited to go into work and potentially seeing the development of a future world champion, and if not, at least a very good driver, and of course an exceptional young man. And it's just surprising how, of course, the name that he carries with him and the history and everything that comes with it, but he just one of the most humble guys that you'll ever see enter Formula One, and just genuinely nice.
Oh yeah, it was awesome, Sam. Like you mentioned, Shaker. I don't think anyone doesn't like Mick. I mean, just a wholehearted fan favorite, and I think he's going to be a fan favorite for years to come. Just one with the name that helps too, but just of how nice the guy is, and how much he cares about everyone is awesome. So it'll be nice to see when fans are back in, how he interacts with fans and stuff like that. But it seems like just a good guy. Learned a lot from his dad, obviously, on how to bring up team morale and really just bring everyone together. So no, awesome to see from Mick.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that puts a wrap on the 2021 Spanish Grand Prix. Not a classic, but definitely an important round to the 2021 World Championship. And we head next to Monaco for the first time since 2019. It's going to be nice to be back for the Monaco Grand Prix. Yep. And
if people are going to say, well, there's no overtaking in Monaco, I assure you, if you want to see some overtaking in Monaco, go watch the Formula E race at Monaco this last weekend. It was phenomenal. There's some really, really nice overtakes. Both cars just lunging it in there, making some really nice overtakes to the S's going uphill. it was a fantastic race to watch. So if you want to see, get a little teaser, I know there's no racing next weekend for F1. So maybe, you could queue it up on Sunday and just make sure you don't look at the results. When watch the race, it was an awesome race to watch. So hopefully the Formula E race translate to the F1 race and we see lots of overtaking in Monaco.
Yeah, at the very least, we could just get a repeat of Verstappen Hamilton in 2019. That will be even more scintillating with the championship now on the line. Of course, it's a 14-point lead for Hamilton heading into Monaco. Max minimized the damage with that fastest lap. Obviously, it would have been nice if he would have gotten Portugal as well, because I believe it would have been only a 13-point lead. But it looks good for now for Mercedes. I think that even though this has been a Red Bull track, Monte Carlo, of course, I think Mercedes are going to be the favorites for pole here. I do think that this will suit the W12, and definitely in the race, obviously, pole position is so important. But just in terms of watching the tires, I think that's going to favor Hamilton, and we know how good he is, of course, in Monaco as well. So just the final thoughts, and then we'll finish with the Grosjean story. Did this first 4 races change your guys' championship outlook? Because when we started this in Bahrain, it looked like, Red Bull and Verstappen, they've got the fastest car. We can say now, after 4 races, in qualifying, looks about even. I think maybe Red Bull's just a little bit faster in qualifying. But in the race trim, it does seem like Mercedes are faster, friendlier to the tires as well. Something about Red Bull just not liking those harder compound tires, especially the C1 and the C2. But like you mentioned, Tyler, a couple of minutes ago about being, if you want to be really pessimistic and say this championship is done.
He's not wrong.
It's true, right? I mean, because history, obviously, 7 years of domination, and Hamilton is just phenomenal with what he's able to do in his car.
The scary thing is, Chris, is that this is the best start Hamilton's had to any season.
I know.
In F1.
This is the best Hamilton has ever driven, and he has 7 world championships. There's no better start to the season than seeing, I'm super invested in this now, and I'm not a fan of Hamilton, but I'm so interested now. His drives have been amazing, man. They've been on another level. We've seen Lewis Hamilton hold down first, but the sheer will to make up times, manage those tires, and still come out the best every single race. It's just an entirely new level for Lewis Hamilton. I think he's just getting better and better with age.
I agree with you. I'm obviously not part of the Lewis Hamilton fan club either, but it's just geez, he's so good in that car. And this season will be the final question of, obviously, I mean, I've hyped up Max Verstappen saying that he could probably beat Lewis in the same car as well, but we'll get our answer this year. But certainly I think Red Bull have their work cut out for them, because not only what you mentioned, Tyler, but this being his best start. Somebody posted this on Twitter, and I saw this, that remember in 2018 when he was in the midst of the battle with Vettel and Ferrari, the funny thing is that he won the same amount of races in 2018 that he did in 2019, even though in 2019 they had a far better car, and you remember that season was a complete walkover. And basically the comment in the thread was that Hamilton just drives way better when the competition is brought up a level or two, and he's done that his entire career. So obviously it's not that much of a surprise to see him excel even further, and he's motivated, and you can see he's a lot more emotional on team radio in terms of him, screaming and being loud, whereas the last couple of years it's kind of been like, yep, yeah, I know, I won, all right, on to the next one. Now he's really invested in it, and it's gotten us even more invested in the battle between the two. So it's not over by a long shot. It's only round 4 going into round 5, and there's plenty of difficult tracks for Mercedes as well, especially when we get into the summer with the hotter conditions. And then, of course, Red Bull could bring some upgrades as well. So don't go anywhere just yet, but I think that Red Bull and Verstappen have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, I honestly, I've been excited for the other seasons. I was way more excited than for this season with the level that Red Bull was bringing. But just this competition that started between Lewis Hamilton, and it's a proper one, where before it was just for first place. Now it's every race. It's a proper competition between Max and Lewis, and I think it's just this season is one to watch if you want to see a rivalry being made, because that's it's 7-time world champion. End of his career. Not end of his career. I could see Lewis Hamilton. No, I'm not saying that.
I can put that to bed because Lewis and Toto are trying to sign a 2-year Mercedes deal before the summer break.
Oh, yeah,
so
that's not a surprise.
I'm glad you caught me and I caught myself there. But yeah, I don't think Lewis. I said it last year at the end of the season that this might be the last year we see Lewis Hamilton in F1. After these first 4 races, if I don't see Lewis Hamilton in F1 next year, it's going to be a shock. And it's entirely like he's raising his level every single season. And like you said, if he performs better with more competition, I think within with this rule change that happens next year, and the levels are changed again, I think Lewis Hamilton is going to be even better.
Yeah,
better.
No, I would agree. And I don't think, obviously he's not going anywhere. The 2-year deal is most likely going to happen within the next few months. That will be signed and confirmed and official. So 2 more years of Lewis after this year, and that's good for the sport, because I think I just want to touch on this quickly. I was watching a local Canadian show, and they were talking how F1 has really popularized through the Netflix series around the world. And just for numbers here in Canada, the Portuguese Grand Prix was the most watched Grand Prix ever in Canadian history at 500,000. That's a lot for Canada. Yeah. That goes up there with some of the, like watching, the Masters or numbers for, a big hockey game or whatever. So that's very impressive numbers. The Spanish Grand Prix numbers, I think it was like 350,000 Canadians watch it live, which is, again, very up there, and a lot of viewers for F1. We haven't seen numbers like this just here in Canada ever before. So it's awesome to hear. Obviously, it helps there's 2 Canadians on the grid, but I think this Netflix series has really popularized F1 to a new level. And the fact that Lewis can, grow his brand with that as well is very important for him in his long-term, goal. And with more people he can touch with his messages, which I know are very important to Lewis, the better. So it makes sense for him to sign a 2-year deal. And I'm glad to see Lewis still in F1. I think he brings a lot to the sport, a lot of eyes, and just, the talent that people can admire with Lewis is pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the drivers that was able to sit in Lewis's seat recently was Romain Grosjean. And we're going to finish this podcast with some good news, the feel-good story of 2021. And in case you guys missed it, Romain Grosjean will be getting an outing in the Mercedes W10 later on this year. Actually, just a couple months' time from now, in June at the 2021 French Grand Prix, he will do a demo run on the race day on Sunday, and then he'll actually get a full test day on Monday at the circuit Paul Ricard, of course, with the full Mercedes team being there. So he's running the 2019 World Championship winning car that won both drivers and constructors world titles. And you could just see the photos and, of course, some of the shots from Grosjean's seat fit earlier this year at the Mercedes factory, just how happy he is. But we have to commend Mercedes and Toto Wolff and whoever else was involved in that decision-making, especially in the midst of a battle like they're on right now against Red Bull, to allocate resources and I'm sure money and time to give Grosjean a nice farewell in Formula One is quite remarkable. And really, I can't think of anything in the history of Formula One that's been done like this. We've seen big crashes before, but to give somebody a proper goodbye like this is something I can't say I've ever seen before, but it's amazing that we're seeing it.
Yeah, it is very, very cool. And something that you have to give, like you said, props to Mercedes for doing it. And I think it just has to do with, how, Grosjean is such a good guy, and they hated to see his last race end like that. So it's interesting. I don't know why, I don't get the whole why they're calling it a test, because it's the 2019 car. So I don't know what he's testing. But I'm just happy the fact that he has to go out and, in front of his home crowd in France to go on a nice demo run. And then, like you said, the test session that will be happening on Monday. And, he's been impressing me in IndyCar so far this season. If you are wondering what's happening with Romain Grosjean, he's racing in IndyCar only on the road courses, which I don't blame him. And, he's been racing pretty well for starting to get his grip. You're starting to get a grip on things in IndyCar, a completely different series, different car. He's been racing very well. So awesome to see from Romain. And I've been cheering for him in IndyCar. I think hopefully you can win a race this year.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, it's a feel-good story of the year. Even my friends who aren't F1 fans, just telling them that story and, the entire background, they were like, oh my God, like what team is going to allow a retired race car driver to come back and be like, hey, you never got to finish, you never got to race in your last F1 race or drive an F1 car by your own rules. So you know what? Come back, have a drive. You get the full day to yourself. We're not going to give you just one lap. You get the full day. Drive an F1 car, and a championship winning car, not even your old car, a car that's, faster than anything else on the grid. Drive it to your heart's contempt and, leave F1 on a good note rather than the memory of a really bad car crash, I just mad respect for Toto and Mercedes for that one.
I think it'd be cool, maybe Lewis gets the flu, you can't race. Roman has to go in the car.
I'm not gonna lie.
Or Stoffel Van Dorn gets shafted again for Stoffel. But
did you guys notice the convenient hand covering of the race suit?
Yeah, they had Van Dorn. Actually, Van Dorn's been racing really well in Formula E.
Mm-hmm.
He might be winning a championship there. But I just poor. I mean, that would suck for a Stoffel, but it'd be awesome to see. Just nothing serious for Lewis. Just a flu. We can't you can't go and it'd be nice to see Romain get a race win in a Mercedes. I don't know. You feel good stories. You wanted that for Nico Hulkenberg too, and you just want to see that for the good guys of the sport that kind of didn't get their chance to shine. I know Roman has podiums and stuff, but just all around good guy.
Just being able to part ways with the sport on his own terms, right? I mean, I think I could just relate it to somebody else, a recent horrific injury that we saw, which was Chris Weidman in the UFC. Oh. And, at 36 years old, suffering a leg break like that, for anybody, let alone a professional fighter, it's not looking good as a return to being able to do what he was doing before. But the reason why even now he's talking about the fact that he wants to fight again is, he most likely won't be champion once again, but to be able to go out on his own terms, like, Anderson Silva did, for example, who had a similar injury, I think that's what's important to these athletes, is you don't want that, being down on the canvas, or in Grosjean's case, being in a fireball, to be your final memories of the sport. So you guys said it really well, and just beautiful stuff from Mercedes and anybody else who was involved in the organization with that. So excellent. Sorry, Shaker.
I was going to say, especially with those, nice guy athletes, like you and I met Chris Weidman, right?
Yeah, I forgot to text you about that, but we did. Do you still have that photo?
I don't know. I'll have to check. I feel like I do, but yeah, Chris, there was a UFC event back here in 2017, 2016. And Chris and I just went to go check it out, and we were literally just walking around the arena, like not even like looking for anything. We were just walking around, checking out the event, and out walks Chris Weidman.
That's sweet.
Just walking around. He's like, oh my God, Chris, that's Chris Weidman. I'm like, oh shit. And we're like, hey man, could we get a picture? And he's like, yeah, for sure. But you got to walk with me though. I got to go to a signing booth. So I just don't have time. So just walk and talk with me, guys. I'm just going to go over there. And we literally for 7 minutes walk with Chris Weidman to his signing booth.
That's just so cool. I was at that event that day and was debating going to the Weidman signing booth to get something signed. And I just didn't go. But that's wild that you guys were there accompanying him. I didn't ever do that.
We had no, it was just so random, dude. Chris and I had just walked out of the event. We were just looking at merch and just kind of walking around, checking out the event. And, out walks Chris Weidman. But just to see, nice guys in that sport to get their, final run out there on their own terms is really good to see.
Yeah, it's awesome stuff. And before we wrap up, another feel-good story. Tyler, you were talking about IndyCar. Of course, Canadian IndyCar driver, or former IndyCar driver, Robert Wickens is also back in a race car. We saw him earlier this week. Actually, he was in a Hyundai. I think it was one of those Veloster-type race cars with hand controls. So, of course, back in 2018, he had a very serious crash as well, and he's still in the recovery process. So to see him back in a race car was phenomenal to see as well. So a lot of feel-good stories in the past week or so.
That was what I was going to transition to, was the Robert Wickens thing.
Oh, were you?
Nice job. Yeah. So that's fantastic. Good job, Chris. Awesome to see him, Canadian, but awesome to see him back in a car at least. I know he's still recovering, and working on his moving his legs. For those who didn't know, he was paralyzed from the waist down, but is recovering from, like, has some movement now. I don't know. It's hard to, I don't know the full story to give you the full details, but a very, very nasty crash, and awesome to see him back in a car.
Yep. And awesome to have you guys tonight for this episode. I think we really did a great job of covering everything in the Spanish Grand Prix and a little bit more as well. So I think we're really starting to nail down these race recaps and race debriefs. So yeah, thank you guys very much for your insight tonight, and we're looking forward to next weekend, or excuse me, the next couple weekends from now in Monaco. It should be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited. Monaco always gets people up and ready. Everyone loves the Monaco Grand Prix, and we're going to try and do a live stream, I believe, for qualifying as well. So make sure you guys tune in for that, so we can have some fun watching Monaco qualifying. It's one of the most exciting days of the calendar, and I can't wait to be there. Chris, you've been to Monaco. I know it's hard with no fans. I'm not sure if there's gonna be fans at Monaco this year.
I think there will be some, yeah.
Okay, but just what's the atmosphere like? You've been to the Monaco Grand Prix. It must just be a complete surreal experience, just with the whole scenario.
Yeah, surreal is a good word. It's almost like it's a weird way to explain it, because when you're there, you don't really believe that you're there, because you see it so much in pictures and obviously on TV that you kind of don't really believe that you're there. But when you leave, you're like, holy shit, you were there in Monaco. So yeah, it's an amazing place. Obviously, maybe when we're on the live stream, I can maybe give people a little bit more details of how things look. Maybe I can post some of the pictures that I took back in the day, but it's really amazing. And just to see the atmosphere at that time, and when there was a ton of fans there as well. And you get a really good sense when you get to walk the track afterwards of just how narrow it is when you think of how wide these modern cars are. But seeing the infamous casino section and the tunnels and things like that, it shows you why Monaco stays on the calendar, even though it's not the most exciting race of the year. It's something about it, the tradition, the spectacle of it. It's just something really, really special. So I'm glad that it's back this year on the calendar, whether it's fans or no fans. But qualifying for Saturday, which hopefully we'll get to do that live stream for, was really the most important session of the year for qualifying. So it should be really, really good one for that. All right, well, that will do it for episode 105 of the Backmarkers F1 Show. If you made it this far, thank you very much for listening and watching to our podcast. Of course, if you haven't done so already, give this video a thumbs up, and also subscribe to our channel on YouTube, on Spotify. Excuse me, we also got our alternative platforms like Odyssey.com if you want to follow us there. And of course, we got all of our social media links down in the description below. For Shaker Barty and Tyler McDonald, I've been Chris Cato. Thank you again for all your support. Until next time, bye for now, and have yourselves a great week.